Every year in June, the Unitarian Universalist Association has its annual General Assembly, or GA as it is affectionately known. GA is a gathering of Unitarian Universalists from all over the country who come together over the course of 5 days to worship together, to attend workshops and trainings, and if they are delegates, to do the work of the association. Anyone who wants to can attend GA, and if you have the chance, it's a great time. But congregations also get a certain number of delegates, 1 delegate per 50 members. And delegates vote on behalf of the congregation, and this is how the association as a whole does its work, through the democratic representation of its congregations. This year, UUI had 4 delegates to General Assembly, and ministers and directors of religious education also automatically are considered delegates and receive a vote. So 6 if you count Susanna, myself. The responsibilities of delegates include hearing reports, electing officers, and voting on important matters at what are called general sessions. There are so many general sessions. There are 5 over the course of the week, and each lasts for several hours, and that is a lot of hours spent listening and discussing and voting. So your UUI delegates put in a lot of time and effort at General Assembly this year. It is a sincere commitment of time and energy and enthusiasm. Now, before COVID, General Assemblies were held in giant drafty convention centers that rotate geographically around the country. And then for 2 years, because of COVID, GA was exclusively virtual. And then this year saw the triumphant return to the giant drafty convention center, this year in Portland, Oregon. But General Assembly was also online. It was a multi-platform General Assembly, just like we're doing church multi-platform today. And your UUI GA delegates, myself included, attended online virtually this GA 2022. There were about 3,200 total attendees this year. It is a tradition at UUI to have a follow-up service after General Assembly in which your delegates can report back to you about the experience. So that is what we are doing today. Over the course of the rest of this service, Tim Murphy, Jennifer Gatz, Kate Stevens, and David Jackoway will be telling you about what they did at GA, what they experienced, and how they felt about it. The theme of this year's General Assembly was meeting the moment. How do we respond as Unitarian Universalists to the challenge of our age? And how do we position our movement for the future? Who are we called to be right now? And who are we called to become to build the beloved community? So the keynote speaker this year was Ibram Kendi, author of the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And this year's General Assembly affirmed our commitment again to be an anti-racist movement, resolving our support for restorative justice and the truthful teaching of American history, and resolving in particularly support for those beleaguered educators who are just trying to teach our children the truth about this country. At this moment when LGBTQ people, and particularly trans youth seeking supportive health care, are under legislative attack all around the country, our commitment to be a welcoming congregation is more important than ever. And Kate Stevens is going to tell you about the GA workshops that they attended related to this commitment to be a welcoming congregation. One very powerful moment at this year's GA came when the news of the Roe reversal dropped in the middle of the week, and UUA President Susan Frederick Gray responded with an impassioned address. The General Assembly this year affirmed our commitment to reproductive justice, calling on all UUs individually and as congregations to commit, advocate, witness, educate, and organize for reproductive freedom, including the right to and access to abortion. And Jennifer Gatz is going to share with you a little bit about this particular moment. At the associational level, matters up for a vote included 2 contested elections for the UUA Board of Trustees and a resolution authorizing the UUA board, okay, the board for the entire association, to recommend a total revision of the UUA bylaws for the next year. The resolution passed, so we are looking at a total reconsideration of the UUA bylaws. So if bylaw revisions excite you, this next year is going to be wild, wild. But jokes aside, the UUA is looking to radically update how they do the work of our association to be more innovative, efficient, effective, and responsive. We don't know what these changes are going to look like. We'll find out in 2023, but suffice to say, the UUA is doing the same work that all of our congregations are doing, right? We are committed to transforming ourselves to meet this moment, just as we have all had to do. And a part of this transformation, as you may know already, is a reconsideration of the language of our 7 principles, 8 principles for UUI. We've been up in this process for over a year now. A recasting, a reimagining of the 7 principles would be a once-in-a-generation change in our understanding of who we are and who we are trying to be. And at General Assembly this year, the Article 2 Commission, the group tasked with this, for the first time gave us kind of a real look at what they are thinking and what they are proposing for reimagining the 7 principles. Just the kind of the first look at how this is moving along. And there are years left in this work, but David Jackoway will be telling you all about that. The worship services and the business sessions of GA are available online at uua.org if you want to watch them for yourselves. There's some great stuff in there. But now, our first presenter is going to be Tim Murphy, who will give his impressions of General Assembly. Tim has a unique perspective on GA every year because he is a member of the GA production team, and so he is intimately involved in making it happen. Tim?
Good morning. And bear with me, this is the first, I'm used to working with paper, and I'm trying electronic this time, so we'll see how it goes. This year's GA was my 26th, including the 2 years of virtual GA and this year's multi-platform GA. So I guess to be fair, it's pretty clear that I really like going to GA. Also, to be upfront about things, I usually work GA, as Jamie referred to, but there's more than just the work he referred to. Several years as a youth advisor, a couple on youth caucus staff, 10 years on the GA planning committee, 9 years as production manager for events in the main hall, a year as a consultant for that. This year as production manager for the large meeting rooms. And yes, if you were trying to count, some of those years did overlap. So yeah, I really enjoyed the experience of GA. But back to the present. As with most of the rest of the world, GA has been headed toward a multi-platform style of presentation for years. It became clear quite a few years ago that not every congregation can afford or has members who can afford to attend GA and pay for the housing, the food, the registration. It's not cheap. There are some opportunities for volunteering that can decrease the cost a little, but how can your congregation have a say in the business of the association without having to attend in person? A number of years ago, online participation in voting sessions became possible, and it has continued to improve. Along with the rest of the world, COVID had the effect of jumping things ahead a few years. Our first online GA in 2020 was actually one of the very first large online conferences anywhere. That has been built on, and now we have a GA where there are in-person events, online events, and events that happen both in person and online at the same time. It's fascinating and exciting, even though I realize my personal demeanor doesn't always show that excitement. If you get me in to start talking to me, you'll see that excitement and energy boiling underneath. Some of you know what I'm talking about. For me, the in-person offers an experience that allows connection, networking, and learning that works better for my personality and for my learning style. But everyone is different, and I'm excited and thrilled that we have progressed to a point where we can offer so much online, and to know that we will continue to strengthen that aspect of GA. And that's part of what my work this year as production manager for the large meeting rooms was about. In the past, those large meeting rooms have been totally an in-person thing. And this year, we had that connection. We were broadcasting like we do, or streaming, however, and having interaction with people who could respond immediately to stuff that was going on in the chat room. Whether your favorite thing is worship, social justice, religious education, workshops, meeting new people, having inspiring conversations, listening to powerful and memorable speakers, I could go on and on. GA has a little bit of each of these and so much more. If you can find a way to attend in person, I highly recommend it. But the online experience is well worth a look too, and continues to expand what it can provide. However you do it, I encourage you to make GA part of your experience, and if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And now, speaking of multi-platform, Kate Stevens is going to join us on Zoom to tell us a little about the Welcoming Congregation program.
Hello, everybody. I am Kate Stevens. This was the second year that I attended GA as a delegate. And Tim mentioned that he has a kind of calm demeanor, and I don't think that I have a calm demeanor. So if I get real worked up, that's just how I am. Most of my time I spent at GA focusing on the 5 practices of welcoming renewal. And now you get to listen to me talk about it. Recently, you may have seen blurbs about the Welcoming Renewal team in the e-blast and thought, aren't we already welcoming? Haven't we been recognized by the UUA as a welcoming congregation since like 2003? Yes, we are. And recently, the UUA has called on churches to begin formally renewing their commitments to welcoming annually. Because without renewal, our congregation is living and operating in the past, especially if our main focus of welcoming is gay and lesbian identities. As the UUA Welcoming Renewal website explains, transgender UUs are still struggling to find community in UU congregations. Bisexual UUs suffer from invisibility, while asexual, intersex, and polyamorous communities are wrestling with a progressive faith that does not privilege their truth. These and many more social ills that plague our LGBTQ+ and TGQNB, that's transgender, genderqueer, non-binary communities, are calling us into a deeper commitment to ensure that our Unitarian Universalist congregations are living into the welcome that we boldly proclaim. So enter here the 5 practices of welcoming renewal. 1 is becoming a welcoming congregation. 2 is welcoming worship services. 3 is welcoming days of observance. 4 is welcoming religious education. And 5 is supporting a welcoming project. Welcoming congregations are congregations that are actively living into the practice of welcome by committing to renewing these annually. Now, UUI implements the 5 practices. We are already a welcoming congregation. We will continue to incorporate at least 2 welcoming worship services that center the themes of LGBTQ+, TGQ, and B, welcome and inclusion. We will continue the practice of acknowledging at least 6 welcoming days of observance. These are included on the Welcoming Congregations calendar throughout the year. We will offer adult religious education classes devoted to welcoming and learning from transgender and non-binary UUs and making good on our promise to transform ourselves. We will continue to donate finance or time to local LGBTQ+, TGQ, and B campaigns or projects. So, how can you help build a welcoming community at UUI? Get involved. The work of welcoming is never done, and expecting LGBTQ+ members to provide all the energy required to meet our welcoming goals is in itself a statement. The only way for our congregation to be truly welcoming is for our congregation to commit to continually renewing our dedication to being welcoming. In the social hall today, you can sign up for the Welcoming Congregation email list. Those on Zoom indicate in the chat that you wish to sign up. This is the best way to stay up to date on UUI welcoming events, actions, and ideas. And we still need team members to help guide and document UUI's upcoming welcoming renewal every year. If you want to support UUI as we renew our commitment to being welcoming and inclusive of people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, speak with the Welcoming Renewal members in the social hall after the service, or indicate your interest in the chat. And as Jamie said, you can also stay after and meet with me virtually in a Zoom room. This is an opportunity for everyone, especially allies, to ensure that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, two-spirit, genderqueer, non-binary, and the like feel fully welcomed, centered, and embraced here at UUI. Thanks.
And our next speaker is your UUI Board President, Jennifer Gatz.
Thank you. So I am Jennifer Gatz, and I am the Board of Trustees President here at UUI, and I was a delegate to GA this year. This was my first time attending GA, but through the years here at UUI, I've kind of picked up some tidbits, and I kind of thought I knew what to expect going into this situation. I thought there would be lots of motions and voting and Robert's rules and intense discussions about small word changes to policy. And there was that. But I wanted to talk about sort of a bigger, very good experience that I had at GA this year. So on Friday morning of GA, it was the 24th of June, I slept in that morning. I had not checked the news. I had not checked social media. So when I logged on to the Zoom session, I first learned about Roe versus Wade being officially overturned. And it felt like a punch in the gut. I'm sure like a lot of people, I felt so alone and so like my country doesn't value me, my society doesn't value me. So one of the first things that happened that morning at GA was that Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who is the president of UUA, gave her opening words. And this was on the agenda, so I'm sure she had something planned for that time, but we will never know what that was because she spent her entire speech talking about this judicial decision and what it meant to her and what it meant to you as a whole. She was emotional, there were tears, she was impassioned, she was angry, and it felt so good to see that. I felt so seen and so heard, and one of the quotes that I loved from her speech was speaking to UUs, saying that your anger is welcome here, and your tears are welcome here. And hearing her say that, it just felt like what I love about being a UU as a whole, of feeling part of a community. So here at UUI, I generally feel like we're kind of a self-contained little unit. Like I don't think about the larger UU community all that much. But in this situation, you know, there were a couple of hundred people on Zoom, there were hundreds to thousands of people there in person, all feeling the same thing. And it was so powerful, and it made me so glad to be there and to be part of this religion as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And our last speaker also joining us on Zoom is David Jackoway.
Greetings from San Jose, California, where I'm going to be attending my nephew's COVID delay wedding ceremony. I'm just down the coast from Portland, where GA was held this year. A major focus of the General Assembly were the presentations by and group discussions about the work of the Article 2 Study Commission. This is a team charged by the UUA Board of Trustees to review and propose changes to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. Now, before you check out at the mention of bylaws, let me rephrase. The commission is a team charged by the UUA Board of Trustees to review and propose changes to the 7 principles and the sources. That's right, the 7 principles and the sources are enshrined in Article 2 of the bylaws. That isn't all. The article also includes sections on the purposes of the UUA, a section on inclusion, and a section on freedom of belief. So this article is truly reflects the soul of Unitarian Universalism. Last year, I talked about why this team was created, so I don't want to rehash that. I'll just quickly mention 3 reasons. First, the bylaws require that Article 2 be reviewed every generation to allow them to stay current with new ideas and new learnings about our ever-changing world. Second, it's been 37 years since the principles were last revised. For context, Ronald Reagan was just starting his 2nd term, and since then we've had 9/11, an endless war, Katrina, a near depression, the first Black president, gay marriage, Black Lives Matter, and COVID. A lot has changed. Third, there have been recent grassroots movements to revise the first principle and to add an 8th principle. Taking all of this into account, the UUA board felt it was time to initiate a comprehensive review of the entire Article 2. Their charge to the commission made 2 key points. Article 2 should reflect our commitment to active anti-racism, and Article 2 should be rooted in love as our common theological core. Not only do we side with love, but as the hymn says, love will guide us. At next year's General Assembly, the Commission will present their proposed rewrite of Article 2, which will be voted on by the delegates at that GA and then again at the 2024 GA. But the Commission hasn't been off in a room somewhere deciding what the new Article 2 should look like. For the past year, they've been asking UUs for their input. And that was their goal at this GA, where they shared some of the ideas and some of the draft language they are considering. Today, I would like to share with you what they presented. I will focus on their presentations about the principles, the sources, and the purposes. You can find the current wording in the gray hymnal just before the first hymn. On one page are the principles and sources, and on the facing page are the purposes. Regarding the principles, the Commission did not share any specific language they are considering, but they did feel that whatever form those faith statements take, they should reflect our shared UU values. They have come up with 7 shared values and asked the delegates to discuss them in small groups. The 7 the Commission listed are interdependence, equity, generosity, pluralism or diversity, justice, evolution, and of course, love. With respect to the sources, the Commission is considering a significant change as they feel that a list of specific sources runs the risk of leaving something out and needing to be updated as new sources are realized. For instance, the list in the hymnal is out of date because we have since added earth-centered traditions as one of our enumerated sources. The Commission is considering replacing the list of sources with a more general statement of inspirations. They shared an example of the type of statement they may be proposing to replace the current list. Here it is. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw upon and are inspired by the full depth and breadth of sacred understandings as experienced by humanity. Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches our faith, we are inspired to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. Turning to the purposes section, the Commission shared 2 different approaches that they are considering. One that's very specific and one that is more aspirational. The first draft reads, the UU Association shall devote its resources to and exercise its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purposes are to equip congregations for vital ministry, to support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to heal historic inequities, and to advance UU values in the world. We do all this consistent with our theological pluralism. Very specific. The second draft reads, the UUA's purpose is to grow and resource faith communities that support people through their lives' journeys and transform the world by liberating ourselves through love. We make that love real through care and justice for ourselves, for our communities, and for the larger web of existence that we are all in. We are called upon to risk ourselves for love. So the commission might be proposing some very significant changes to Article 2. It's important we are all aware that over the next 2 years, we may be asked to consider a new statement of our UU faith. I was very surprised that many of this year's delegates had no clue about what the commission may be asking of us. To ensure that this congregation is kept informed, I have created an Article 2 Slack channel where I will post the information I shared with you today and other links about the commission's work now and for the next 2 years, giving us an opportunity to discuss this. It's important to emphasize that what they presented at GA and that I've shared with you today is still in its formative stage. Nothing is final. It was presented for the purpose of getting our feedback and to help shape their final proposal for next year. They will continue seeking input from us. Over the next 3 months, they'll be holding several Zoom discussions open to everyone. However, the members of the commission themselves will be focused on their writing, so they have formed an outreach team to facilitate these Zoom discussions. And last week, I was honored to be asked to be a member of that team. I don't know what the commission will be proposing at next year's GA in Pittsburgh. It may be some minor changes to the current Article 2, but given what you've heard here today, given the charge they received from the UUA board, and given the tenor of our times, I don't think so. I think they're going to swing for the fences and offer to the delegates at the next 2 GAs revised principles, inspirations, and purposes for our 21st century Unitarian Universalism. Please consider partnering with us and being one of those delegates. Thank you.
All of those discussions and conversations that David Jackoway alluded to, where the commission presented their thoughts and got feedback, you can find those all online at uua.org. They are part of the general sessions of General Assembly. They are all available for you to view. And I want to include our General Assembly service today with words from UUA President Susan Frederick Gray, given in her annual GA address about how we as UUs meet this moment. We are, says Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, in the churn of change. Systems and practices that we've relied on are breaking down and shifted, while what is needed is being imagined but not yet here. In times of change and loss and uncertainty, there is a risk that fear will dominate and cause us to cling to the status quo and to systems that no longer serve us just for a feeling of the certainty that they give and the fear of moving into the unknown more fully. But she says, let us remember that we are not a people of fear. We are a people of faith. We are a religious people of imagination and possibility. We are a living tradition, a faith that reveres the past, but trusts the dawning future more. The future awaits your liberating ministry, she says. Go forward in the power of love and proclaim a truth that makes us free. UUI, too, is in a time of change, celebrating its past while transforming and positioning itself for a bright future. We need each other. Our community and our world need us as partners in the work of building the beloved community, because none of us can do this alone. May we meet this moment together with courage and imagination, dedicated to truth, grounded in a love big enough to set all of us free.